Hello everyone, in this video we're looking at using random loot drops. For the example I'm using chests and an enemy character as the source. We will be using the combat module for this because of its spawning actions. In order to create this we will need Unity, Game Creator and the combat module. Before we start I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. So before we set this up I quickly want to show what we're actually doing here. So I have one chest here. Well, it doesn't really look like a chest. It's not really about the look. It's more about the action. And I duplicated that 2 times. That's the important part. These are simple duplicates. And yet they will have a chance to spawn different items. So pretty cool. I have a enemy character that literally has the same component, and I'll show you how that activates as well. So when I start playing here and I press 8 to open, it will spawn this item. And when I press 8 again, it will spawn the same item. And let's hope there's something different this time. There it is. Nice one. Now the way this works is when you check these spawners, they will have 3 items, and you can expand this to how much you want. You can set 20 different prefabs if you want. It's completely up to you. So yeah, that's pretty nice. And then you can set the weight, so the chance of the item dropping as well. So 50% chance, 50-50, and basically that makes it a 33% chance in total because there's 3 different items. So pretty cool. Now you can alter this to 100 for example, and it would change the ratio like this, or well, you know, set it to whatever you want. Now if I kill this guy and I turned off his perception, well, pretty much 0, so he's not really doing anything, and after 2 seconds it will spawn an item as well. And yeah, my collider on the sword isn't that great, but you get the idea. And this is all the same script, so lucky here that it actually managed to drop all 3, because they're all just the same spawners. So the same spawner duplicated 4 times in total, and these are the results we get. So pretty cool, and I'm going to show you how to set this up. So in order to get this to work, I basically created a couple of prefabs. Now the prefabs don't really matter, but basically they're, you know, just simple prefabs with a rigid body, a collider, and you can pick them up on left mouse click. So basically exactly the same as in the inventory example for the potion. That's where I got the idea from. So we have a potion, an armor piece, and a sword. Now it's nice to actually add a rigid body and a box collider, because you know it will actually drop. So if I add this to the scene here and I drag it up, press play, it will actually drop the item. So yeah, as you can see, the collider isn't great, but you know, it's the idea that matters. So I'd recommend doing that. Obviously you don't have to. If you want the items to just float in the air, then you know, don't add a rigid body. It's completely up to you. But yeah, these are some simple prefabs I added just for this. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to create a 3D object. So let's grab a cube. There we go. And this is supposed to represent the chest in a bit. And I know it doesn't look great, but you know, it's not about the design here. Let's scale this to 0. No, not the collider. Let's scale this to 0.5 and 0.5. And that's kind of a chest look. Not really, but it misses the lid, but you know, obviously if you want to go do this properly, then you should take the effort to actually animate all of this. But there we go. So yeah, really simple. Still floating, that annoys me. There we go. So let's add a material. So I have a wood material which literally is just brown, so it's not actually wood, it's just brown, but there we go. So let's rename this, call it chest. And I'm going to add a second box collider, which will be the trigger area. Let's make sure gizmos is turned on so we can actually see it as well. Let's drag this entire chest a bit closer. We don't want it to interact with the character. There we go. So this second collider is going to be the trigger area that you enter. So let's make this too big. And there we go. So yeah, that's the area. We're going to add a marker as well. There we go. Let's turn this back to 0.1 at least. And there we go. And yeah, this is about where you'll move to. So really simple. And then we have the basics. Now what we're going to add next is a trigger. So what happens when we enter the area? So let's do a player enter. Let's add the actions straight here, it's just easier. And do another trigger, player exit, and let's add the actions here as well, dragging that in. So we have two sets of actions, so what happens once we enter and what happens when we activate. Now the important part is the little UI that actually tells us what button to press. So let's make sure that's actually in here. Set it to world space 0, 0, 0. And let's make this another one. There we go. Yeah, there we have it, our canvas. Let's add a image. How big is this canvas? It's a bit of a weird size. Let's make it 800 by 800. Do the same with the image, 800 by 800. And to make it black, it's just easier to read. And we're gonna add some white text. Don't know why there's a second canvas there. There we go. So we have a text as well. Let's change this to press 8 to open. I'm not sure why that is completely in a different spot. That's a bit weird. So let's 5. Even the smallest text is too big. This is strange. Let's try that again. There we go, now it's all fine. It's a bit strange. I'm not sure why that happened, but oh well. And let's call it press 8 to open. Yeah, that's not the prettiest text, but at least it works. There we go. So we have our canvas. So that's one of the things that needs to activate once we actually go in there. And one of the easiest things we could actually do is create an empty, and let's call this open, and just drag this in here. This open will have its own set of actions as well. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to simply set active, going to drag open in there. That way the trigger can't be used if we're not in it. And we're going to add, let's just copy over the same action and turn it off. So once we exit, it will automatically turn off open, and our canvas is part of that open. So yeah, really the simplest way to do this. Now this open will have its own trigger as well. So using keypad 8, not because it makes any sense, simply because, well, you know, it works. And let's add some actions here. Let's just keep it all together. There we go. So we're gonna move our player to this marker. Player, marker. There we go. Let's actually turn off the canvas. There we go. And then we need the same one, and I'm going to add a small weight just in case. I don't know why, you know, I often do this, but sometimes it just makes a bit more sense. There we go. And we're going to do that after it deactivates the canvas. And we're going to turn on the spawner. Now we haven't created the spawner yet, so let's do that right now. So we're going to right click and let's actually add it to here. So right click, spawner with sphere collider. There we go. So make sure this is about the middle. Doesn't need to be, by the way, I just like to have it aligned. And I'm going to put it here because this is where I want the item to drop, and it will drop on the table. Cool. So what we need to change here are a couple of things. So pattern type, I'm going to use add spawner origin here. I'm not going to turn on snap to ground, just going to keep that simple because all of my objects actually have rigid bodies, so they'll drop on the table if you were. We need to have spawn by weight enabled, and I'm going to add 3 items here. So let me just drop all of these in. One, one, and one. Now you can change this as well, so we could actually do 3 here, for example, with potions. Let's set this all to 50. There we go. I'm not allowing respawning here, and I'm not allowing despawning. Now you could do this despawning, so basically if after an amount of time loot would disappear, which is actually pretty cool. So you can do that by distance, you can set your own distance or calculate it based on the size of this sphere collider. So that's something you could definitely do. Most games actually do have that loot will despawn at some point, but that's completely up to you. I'm going to just turn it off for now. And the important thing here with this sphere collider is that it's huge, and yeah, this is big, maybe a bit exaggerated. Even that is wildly exaggerated. There we go. Now, reason for this is that the spawner will work inside of the sphere collider. But if you make the sphere collider really small, then it would keep respawning those objects and only want them to spawn once. And the nice thing with making this a big area is that by default it will also be a big area for you to leave until it would despawn the loot. So it's actually a nice combination there. So I'm going to drag in that spawner under our chest here, and that's something we will enable. There we go, and we're going to turn it on. So now it's turned off, and let's give this a go, see what happens. Pretty sure I forgot something, but I did. Right from the start, I forgot to turn off the canvas. Oh, there you go. Turn off open, there we go. So reason I'm turning off open is because if I press 8 right now, I don't want anything to happen. And that it's because that trigger is part of an object that isn't activated. And if I enter this area now, it will say press 8 to open. I press 8 and it will spawn my item. And yeah, that's one of them. If I were to do this again, let's hope I'm actually getting a different result. If I were to do this again, I will get the same item. That's amazing. And there we go, an armor. So that's pretty cool. Now, to make it slightly easier to demonstrate the different items, all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to duplicate this. And let's just do it again. And let's do it again, because why not? There we go. Loads of chests, and let's see what we're going to get. I hope this is going to be a bit of variation, but you know, it's random, so we don't really know. We have armor here, armor again, and we have the 3 potions that spawn at the same place, but because of the rigid bodies they blast away. It's pretty funny. It happens again. And an armor. So this is pretty cool actually, is that I have 5 different chests, and even though there's the same chance of spawning either of these items, I didn't get the sword once. Now if any of you played, you know, RPGs that were loot based, so think of Destiny, this is one of those things that keep you playing and also annoy you a lot. So a useful mechanic. Now, in order to do this with a enemy, for example, we're just going to use the same spawner. So I'm going to duplicate this once, going to drag it on this character, and this character has a lot set up, but it's not really all that important. What else he has set up? Oh, that was a bad idea. Now I'm going to make sure that it's actually inside of the player. That's quite important. And the reason this is important is because of the spawn area. So where do you want it to spawn? I'm going to put it on his head. That's perfect. And the spawner has the same action, so none of that is any different. So just going to turn it off. And this is a guy that I've set up in several tutorials. And basically on death he ragdolls. So he has a condition that if he no longer has any health, he will ragdoll. And if you've seen any of my enemy AI or shooter AI, melee AI tutorials, you will recognize this set of actions. It's based on a condition. So if he no longer has any health is equal to 0, then he will ragdoll. Now what we're doing here is we're literally just adding small weight to give him time to drop to the floor, and we're going to set active that spawner. Where is it? Cool. Now let's make sure the spawner is part of the character, that way the location won't change. And yeah, that's it. That's all we're doing. So let's give this a go. Now, as I mentioned before, I just completely turned off his perception. And yeah, there we have our loot. So pretty cool. Now, if you don't want these items to drop, for example, and you just want them to remain in the air like an orb or something like that, all you'd need to do is just remove the rigid bodies and they will move. So if I just turn off gravity here, I'm pretty sure we'll get the same effect. Yeah, and this way they will float in the air, and that's it. And I click and I pick them up. So that's one of the ways to do it if you're going for floating orbs or something like that. Now, in order to avoid the items doing what they did with the potions, for example, you'd have to make a small change. So I'm just going to remove all of the chests. It's just too much effort to change all of them at the same time. So I'm going to go to the spawner, and as you can see, I have spawner origin set up, and that's because, well, the original idea was to only have one item spawn. Now you can do different things here, so you can do spiral, random with overlap, so basically decide how it spawns. And the important thing is that it depends on the radius here, so that's something you'll definitely need to make a bit smaller. So let's make this, I don't know, 20. Five. Oh, there we go. So let's do 5. And going to do 3 on all of them, that way I'm sure something actually drops. And we can do spiral. There we go. And I need to make sure it's actually turned off. Let me turn on the gravity part as well. And the thing here is you can alter spacing and all of that. You can, well, that's a bit much. You can alter, well, you can just change whatever you want, really set your own radius, etc. So let's just do spiral, and let me actually make sure the spawner is disabled. And once we go in here, I'm going to press 8 and we will have 3 items drop, and this way they won't, you know, interact with each other. They still have rigid bodies, so as you can see, our enemy kicked them away. But yeah, it was a small item. So yeah, that's it really. That's all you need to do in order to set this up. So it's a really, really simple action, but it's actually, really powerful at the same time. If you see my video on the spawner to actually use it for character spawning in order to increase performance in your scene, for example, I'm pretty sure that's the ultimate goal. But the nice thing with the weights being added to the last update is that you can use it for something totally different, like random loot drops. So this is actually really, really cool, and I would recommend anyone to try this out. So hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.